Welcome to the Impact Room, a business, CX and leadership podcast brought to you by the team at Douglas Jackson. We feature real conversations and powerful insight from impactful and diverse leaders driving growth, business, CX and transformation that helps elevate and shape exceptional leadership. So let's dive into our next episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe or share if you like this content. Thank you. So hello, I'm Michelle Ansell, Managing Partner at Douglas Jackson, and today on the Impact Room I'm joined by Sean Keane, who's the co-founder of Service Economics. Sean works with leaders of complex, often regulated service organisations, helping them improve customer outcomes whilst reducing cost, but not by adding more technology or resource, but by designing how service actually works. What I found particularly interesting about Sean and Service Economics work is the shift from thinking about efficiency, i.e. how we handle demand, to effectiveness and why that demand exists in the first place. So Sean, welcome. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you about this and more.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Lovely to get the chance to come and join you, and looking forward to our chat.
Good. So Sean, we talked a bit about the difference between efficient service and effective service. So in practical terms, when you walk into let's say a regulated organisation, maybe a housing association or financial services firm, what does well organised waste actually look like on the ground?
Oh wow, I'm glad you started me off with a nice easy one.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a lot to unpick there. So I guess I'd probably a useful place to start off with is just to sort of really quickly distinguish and contrast what we mean between efficient service and effective service. So and there's a sort of a quick point to make up front, which is efficiency is a good thing. But it's even better when it's applied intelligently. What I mean by that is in service industries, a lot of the thinking that's been applied here, and it's been inherited as people have come into their careers, and there hasn't really been much sort of formal training or science behind service itself. But a lot of the thinking that's come into service industries has its origins in manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And in manufacturing, as you'd be familiar with, a lot of the focus is on efficiency and doing things at lower unit cost. And there's a fundamental big difference between making something in a factory and making service. And that fundamental thing is when your materials are dropped off at the factory gate through all bit coming out at goods out, you're in complete control of everything that goes on in there. Mm-hmm. Now, in service systems, there's something slightly different, which is it involves this little thing called a customer. Mm-hmm. Right, and a lot of the thinking that's applied to service industries that's come from manufacturing is all about doing work at lower unit cost, doing it faster, applying automation where we can. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it can become quite a dangerous and damaging thing when you don't really understand some of the things that are quite different. So, for example, a lot of the thinking, I'll pick an easy target, an easy one, is average handle time. Mm-hmm. Right, that is on average, we expect a customer's call to take 8 minutes, and that's the target we're going to set. Unfortunately, in the real world, some customers come with an inquiry that takes 30 seconds. Maybe someone takes 8 minutes, but quite often you'll find that take a 15 or a 12 minute. So what happens is that the targets that are put in place become the way that services run. And with that example, if you don't fit neatly into an 8 minute average handle time, something happens. You get hung up, you get transferred because someone's working to an efficiency target. They don't want to get into trouble. Mm-hmm. Whereas effectiveness is taking a different stance, and it's saying, hang on a minute, how much of this work even needs to be here in the first place? Mm. Okay, so in terms of sort of first practical thing, not all work that comes into service organizations actually needs to be there. And for those of your viewers or listeners who are not familiar with these concepts, there's two types of demand from customers. One is something we call value demand, and the other one is something we call failure demand. Mm-hmm. Value demand is that work that's always going to be there. So I'm becoming a customer. I want to change something on my subscription. I want to move house, change address, whatever it may be. I want to make a payment. And your opportunity there, where it's appropriate, is maybe to look to introduce some technology to automate it. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That demand's always going to be there. Now, the other type of demand that exists is something we call failure demand. It's a type of service waste. A failure demand is basically the failure to do something or do it right first time for your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens in organizations is lots of things drive failure demand. We can explore what drives them a bit later on. But the bottom line, Michelle, across UK service industries, what sort of percent do you think of all contact is failure demand? Give me a percentage.
I dread to think, but I'm going to go quite high.
Oh,
Probably
really?
40, 50%. I don't know.
Wow. Okay, you've got a pessimistic outlook. So look, in our experience, we've been doing this a long time. Depending where you go, if it can range anywhere from 20 to 80% of all
Well, I was about right,
contracts.
Sean.
You were, but I didn't want you to steal my thunder. No, but the point there, when you think about it, is
Mm,
that's quite shocking. 20 to 80% of all of this work that's coming in here doesn't need to be here, and it's costing us money to upset
yeah.
customers. I'll pause there because there are a couple of big consequences and implications that follow from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what tends to surprise the leadership teams the most then? So, when you first see that true breakdown between what you discuss as or describe as value demand and then
Mm-hmm.
failure demand, how do they? Is this news to people? Really?
Quite often it can be. The first thing I
Yeah.
wanted to say before I sort of go into answering that in a bit more detail is it can be very, very easy but misplaced for people to think that this is about blame, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this we talk about this sort of inheritance principle, which is it's not just one person's fault, and it's not a fault thing. It's the system that they're working within, and it's a number of things that have happened over time to result in this situation. So to get to answering your question of what's leaders' reactions, it can range, and it can range from shock, surprise, through to relief.
Mm.
I always knew there was something wasn't right here, and we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of chasing our tails to a certain extent. Um, but I think these days, particularly, with all of the pressures that we've had come to bear, if you're in a regulated service environment, you've probably, been impacted by this little thing called the internet, which is having quite an impact,
Mhm.
customer choices, but a click away. And for a lot of service leaders, it feels like the walls are closing in from every direction, and the traditional tools and approaches aren't working. So quite often there's a sense of relief, disbelief sometimes, and then when we involve leaders in understanding what's going on themselves, the kind of pennies drop, and it's like,
Mm.
well, of course. So part of this is really about showing people um, new perspectives and understanding what's going on in service operations in a way that typically they've never had to before.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I know we were talking because your background, you're from a technology background. Back in the day, you were working for probably some of the very early providers to technology to the service industry, right? And like we've been around just as long. But there is this tech bias, isn't there? And businesses are spending all this money, whether it be on technology or even you talked about manufacturing. So if you think about Kaizen or Lean, and funnily enough, just last week I was talking to a business and they had spent loads of money on bringing in all these Kaizen specialists, got everything processed, really, really streamlined. And then the COO was like, where's the efficiencies? So they hadn't, whilst they'd spent all this money bringing all these experts, and the same can be with the tech, bring it all in, and then where's the actual efficiency gain? Oh, it doesn't exist. And even now when we're seeing like everyone's spent all this money on chatbots, and that's meant to take away, the propensity to call, etc., etc. And we're seeing the decline on chatbots because, as you say, customers are demanding or wanting more and going again to that average handle time, that value service. So, I mean, you've seen this. What would you sort of say to those elements? They seem quite relevant to what you've said already, Sean.
Yeah, well, wow, there's a lot to unpick in here. So I'll start picking in no particular order. So to the point about customers, becoming more demanding. I don't think customers are becoming more demanding. I think they've now got there's been a bit of a leveling, right? The ability to be able. I mean, I don't know what you're like, but now car insurance has come out for renewal. I know I'll go on the aggregator site. I'll probably pick the second cheapest as a brand that I've heard of. And then because I've had, unfortunately, in the past to go through a claims experience, I'll go and look at Trustpilot, right?
Right.
Because it matters. And if I need to pay a bit more premium for a brand whose experience and reputation for service is better, I will, because that counts. So I think there's been a bit of a leveling and a democratizing in service in general. And then the other bits there in terms of automation. So again, automation, can be fantastic, but it has its right place. And I'll sort of come back a bit to the earlier point, the revelation about value demand and failure demand. And I was saying, look, when you let that sink in for a little bit, there are some big consequences. So part of my background, and I still do a fair amount of these days, has been involved in helping large complex organizations procure their technology. I can sort of give you a quick case study. Let's say you've got 1,000-seat contact center, and let's say you're doing really well with your service, and you've got a 35% failure demand. That's still pretty high. The typical playbook with IT-led procurement is to go out to market to replace the old 1,000-seat contact center, to buy a new out-of-the-box omni-channel shiny new cloud contact center for another 1,000 seats. So hang on a minute, we're actually going to be unwittingly spending all that money on 350 seats worth of tech that we don't need.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's before you think about the people costs, and that's before you think about the implications. So there are lots of this. So to the point about efficiencies and without going into sort of a method ideology war here, a lot of the Lean Six Sigma improvement type methods ironically have their origin in manufacturing. And there are very few methods that are well suited to service operations. And there's a couple of out there that people are interested, very happy to sort of give them some pointers. But actually, there's a couple of things in here, which is the starting point here. If you really take the time to understand why your customers are contacting you, I promise you, that's a gift that keeps on giving. One of those gifts is through the tech scenario that we've just described. But the fundamental value of better understanding your customer's demand and why they're contacting you is it provides you with immediate context on what you should do and equally what you shouldn't do. So, for example, just because you can automate something, we've probably all got our own pet horror stories here, being put through an automated experience that's never going to be able to help you because your need is complex. Surely the right thing to do is find out what you need, use the tech to let you express your intent easily, and then get you to someone who can help you quickly.
Yeah, fabulous. So if we looked at, let's say, for example, you've done a fair amount of with housing associations and as well as other regulated organisations. But if we look at those pockets of service waste that you've talked about, then what is the one change that's made a noticeable difference for tenants and or customers, would you say?
It would whilst there are lots of things that you could do, and we have something we call a universal service model, which has sort of got 5 levels to it. I'll just talk about a couple of levels right now because it's sort of hopefully of immediate value to your audience. The first one is understanding demand, right? So we've spoken about value and failure, and that's understanding what's driving the failure, okay? And typically what you'll find, particularly in customer service environments, and this kind of goes to the heart of a big debate that people perennially have. I've been seeing it every year for 20 plus years. How to make the contact center more strategic. No offense to anyone, but the contact center provides a fantastic service, but quite often it is the corporate dustbin for problems that originate elsewhere, right? And so you need to be able to take the insight out of that contact center and go and engage with the people causing that waste. But in terms of housing specifically, the thing that's made the biggest difference has been understanding that demand. And then the second thing is understanding how are we responding. So we call it response capability. And I'll bring this to life really quickly in housing. So through our work in housing, we know that on average, the level of service waste in UK housing associations ranges between 60 to 80%. Okay. And 80% of that failure demand is typically related to repairs.
Mm.
Now, everyone knows that in housing, and the regulator knows it. And when you look at the tenant satisfaction measures, which are their regulatory reporting regime, you see the same thing coming out time and again.
Yeah.
Now, the big thing that's going on here is that in housing associations, they are applying transactional thinking and tools to solving what is very complex casework.
Mm.
So, for example, we've sat in contact centres, a call has come through and the advisor has done something and treated it as first contact resolution, FCR,
Mm-hmm.
but you're sat there thinking, hang on, this is definitely not their first contact. Okay, so it drives you into needing to think about your measures and response capability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And is there, I mean, just going to that point, because I agree with you, we speak to a lot of housing associations, and obviously that repair situation is significant and a big challenge for them. But when you say like they're dealing with it like a transactional problem, do you think when you say, I suppose, about the contact centre being sort of, that you didn't use the word rubbish bin, but you're sort of, for a lot of the problems, they know the problems. And I think this is the problem with most sectors. They know the problems. So why are they unable to see the solutions around sort of efficiency and effective sort of service?
Yeah, so part of it, if I stick with the housing example and open it up a bit further, is FCR, for example. So look, across every sector and in life in general, we all hanker after simple answers, right? It's just we're kind of programmed, you want something convenient and a nice simple. Unfortunately, back in the real world, it's not simple. So with the housing example, but look, this applies in other sectors too. It applies, in financial services. There's three types of basic responses that you can give as a service provider in a call center. So one is it's transactional, ringing up, change of address, I need to make a payment, you're done, we've made the updates. Very good. The next one is what we call a ticket. So sticking with the housing scenario, I need a locksmith or my boiler's not working. Now I can't repair your lock down the phone, or I can't fix your boiler down the phone, so I'm going to schedule an engineer. So I'm going to get someone within a 4-hour, 12-hour SLA, whatever it is. And broadly speaking, that's going to happen. Now, the third type of thing is I've just come back from holiday and there's been a leak in the ceiling above my flat. It's ruined my kitchen. Now you're into something that's really quite complex and you need someone to mini project manage it. And it's also, you imagine a car insurance claim, the same parallel works here. So what you need is to have someone to, like a mini PM, to manage that. I need to get the joiner, the plumber, the decorator, the tiler, whatever trades are required. But what actually happens today, I don't wish to generalize because some organizations are sort of better at this, is the first tradesperson will be scheduled. Tick, done my thing. And it moves on. But no one's tracking what happens next. And this is why you get the horror stories of residents saying, well, why is it taking you 9 months to fix this thing? Now, listen, it's probably very easy for me to say is there are other complexities to this. But when management in UK in general had been brought up on efficiency-based thinking, it doesn't know about these other types of measures, it could be challenging.
Indeed. So, I mean, from my side, when we are hiring directors, if we look at, as you say, housing, utilities or financial services, I mean, it's across sectors, it's irrelevant really, but everybody now wants transformational leaders. And I wrote recently about transformation, there is no end game. It's just ongoing now. So from what you've described, what do you think, what kind of leadership behaviours actually move the dial day to day, in terms of perhaps who you work with or where you've seen it most effective?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. The first one on the individual level is definitely deep curiosity, right? Intellectual curiosity, wanting to know about things. I sort of described this scenario as an analogy of the walls closing in, which is, we're going through a bit of a macroeconomic set of perfect storms, things, we're having to respond, and last year's budgets and plans, how long are they valid for? Month by month these days. So people need, we would encourage people, we would suggest that people who've got that intellectual curiosity want to learn about things differently. That's going to be really important. The second thing is, no matter how senior you are, it's a key part of what we do. go take leaders to where the work is done, right? Go spend time with your people who are bathed in the good, the bad, and the ugly, because quite often they will be equipped with many of the answers. And then the other thing that I would say is, and it's easy to assume this, is many people think that great service is not just an output of the service function, right? Everybody's in the service game, and so where am I going with this? Which is the ability to build allies and influence to create a coalition. So, for example, in a lot of the technology work that we help organisations do, we'll always counsel and advise, go and get a COO and a CIO as co-sponsors of this project.
Yeah.
Because quite often a lot of the change is technology led. Good people try to do good things, but interpreting what the tech is there to do to help customers. Whereas actually you get much better outcomes when you have a business-led approach to IT. Sure. So I think it's about people who are able to go and build coalitions and go and find those people across the rest of the organization. So I'll put it another way. In most organizations, we're all in our functions trying to hit a local green traffic light and hit performance targets.
Yeah.
And next to each other, we're all looking green. But no one really is looking what it's like from the customer's perspective, where end to end, they're the only people who have to traverse it all. It's quite often an amber or a red traffic light.
Yeah.
So having those sort of combined set of curiosity, being preparedness to go and spend time in the ops, and then build a coalition, I think are some of the key attributes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that red amber analogy as well, it's exactly the same for business. And it's why, as we said earlier, they're spending all this money, but the business isn't actually getting the result from all of these things. But the local people and the local siloed functions, they are, as you say, all green, but that transformation that the business is looking for sometimes is lacking in the return on investment, right? So, I mean, we've talked about technology and that bias that has been, and of course now we all have this push towards digital AI in customer service, but also you work with the Trustpilot surveys, and we know surveys generally are dropping off a cliff in terms of who responds and when and that sort of thing. But so you talked about, again, service, but we know customers mainly want things to work first time. The best service can be sort of no service, right? And then to speak to that human when it matters. So it looks like that ease, that effort, they're higher than actual delivery of a great service in some respects. In the regulated markets that you work in, how do you think you strike that balance between digital first and human always?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I know you're representing opinions on and mindsets on behalf of many people in the industry. It always makes me smile when people talk about striking a balance, and this is the point where I say, look, honestly, once you've found a way to make this work, you can never unsee it, because people have come from a mindset and inherited experience of it. It's this unspoken tension and trade-off between better customer experience and lower costs. Now, when you look at things through a service effectiveness mindset and you see the evidence in front of you, it's really simple. Stop trying to chase cost, where paradoxically you bring more cost back into the business. If you chase quality, the cost takes care of itself, right? And if you were to say, okay, service improvement initiatives, if your proverbial CEO was to challenge the board, including service leaders, and say in COOs, say, right, I'd like to get everyone's ideas in the next 2 hours, please, on when we're going to achieve a 40% OPEX saving. I don't think you'd have many items on that list. Yet you've got this service waste that's there, it's real, but it's hidden in plain sight. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but I think within there is, once you understand your customer demand, your transformation shopping list reveals itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, carry on. Go on. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you.
I was just going to probably duplicate the point about saying that to the trade-off, it feels counterintuitive, but it costs you more to deliver bad service. So if you understand your demand, to your point about the best service is no service. I mean, look, apart from people that are in the service game, who really wants to ring their contact centre. It's usually a sign of something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Self-service is increasingly working, and when you need a human to help you, it's probably with something that's really quite complex and requires some mediation, right? So making that all work, it's good for the customer, good for the bottom line, and importantly, we haven't really kind of touched on this. It's really good when you look at the growing sector of regulatory oversight. Right, the regulators are moving from a position because, let's be clear, customer service has become really political over the last decade. Right, and you're seeing this trickle down through the regulators, and the regulators are moving from saying, "Show us your reporting compliance," to "Show us how you evidence better customer outcomes." And the usual ways of working run out of road.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been one of the challenges, hasn't it? I think there's been a lot, what I've seen, without naming names or sectors, that where the regulators start to get involved and start to tighten, the ask, I suppose, or up the ante, I think businesses, they start to focus on avoiding penalties versus doing what they should be doing from a strategic perspective, right? And then, as you say, I think they're chasing the wrong behaviours, or because they're chasing something from a negative, like they perhaps, we need it to be cheaper, rather than, as you say, let's get it right, let's do it right, let's be qualitative. We might not get it right this year, but in the long term, it'll be better. And I think it's chasing the wrong metrics or doing it for the wrong reasons. And now the regulators switching again, as you say, those individuals are running out of that road, having to think differently, but they're already behind the curve now, and they've got to catch up and pull back on all this messy sort of wrong processes or interactions. Is that sort of what you're leaning towards as well?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a couple of points in what you just said, I think worthy of just drawing out a bit here. So one is about seeing improvements next year. I can assure you, you can find opportunity that delivers benefit really quickly. I mean, just without straying the wrong side of close to promotion. We'll say to people, look, if you're in a complex regulated industry, if we can't find at least 20% service waste, we won't charge you. There's so much to go after, and you don't have to go after everything, right? Part of this is producing results, and particularly new enroll or established is about demonstrating credibility, right? And it's about releasing capacity quickly and improving service levels, and helping create credibility and buy-in from the rest of your senior management cadre or board level, depending on which level you're operating at. And we run sort of typically quarterly events where we sort of share some of these concepts and practical tips. And we did one recently on vulnerability. And don't get me wrong, we absolutely advocate for and fully support the increased focus around enhanced knowledge and understanding and techniques and tools to better understand vulnerable customers and then support them. But you see this momentum going on. We're like, hang on a minute. Rather than more efficient support for vulnerable customers when they contact you, how about you understand the reasons that are driving them to avoid the pointless reasons they contact you in the first place? Because maybe that's an even better outcome for your vulnerable customers, is that they don't have to be put through the distress, heightened additional distress of having to get in contact with a service provider. Maybe they don't need to.
Yeah, definitely. So for leaders who are under pressure to do something with AI, what would you say they should understand about their demand before they invest? I expect it's similar to what you've just said, really, but
I'll unapologetically keep coming back to it, because I said earlier on, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's like sort of foundation level, which is understand your demand. It's so much more powerful than where a lot of organizations, and again, it's not a criticism, I understand why they do this, spend time and effort on benchmarking and how do we compare to peers. The only kind of benchmark that really matters is your organization, your customers, through your unique set of circumstances and their needs. So if you understand that, that will tell you really quickly where and how your opportunities lie. Now, again, with a nod to the earlier points about avoiding unnecessary spend on IT, right? Is right now, the opportunities as we see them in service environments for AI are around narrow defined structured use cases and tasks that can do things like the obvious ones about post agent, wrap up and cool things like that. One of the things that surprised me a lot that we would have thought we'd seen a lot more focus on an application for AI is around data analysis, right? Because there is, we think, a lot of underexploited opportunity with that. And the other thing that I'd say is I'll draw the parallels with earlier incarnations of AI in things like interaction analytics and speech analytics technologies. In 10 days, we can train people and show them to better understand their demand insights that potentially can unlock millions of pounds worth of OPEX, and you haven't had to spend a single dime on any tech. Mm-hmm. Being equipped with that sort of insight first, right, means that you are less beholden to the black box promises of tech vendors, right? So just with that sort of those foundations, and then you can work out probably with much nicher applications of where it's worth applying AI or AI-powered tools like analytics.
Interesting, because I think we see the same. I think it's easy to be sold the dream, but actually it's like, well, I'm not sure sometimes the leaders understand what it is they really want. So they buy what they're being told it can do, but then when they get it, they can't get to what they have been sold because they don't really know what they want. So it seems like this ever go, I can't think of the word, what's it called, merry-go-round, that's it. I kept seeing Zebedee, I couldn't get the word, but you can't stop and actually get off and get to the new place. So I mean, where should leaders start, if in the next 100 days or so? If you think about, let's say, a newly appointed COO or a chief customer experience director or whatever, in a housing association or another regulated sector, bank, insurer, whatever. So for their first 100 days, what do you think that are the one or two diagnostics or conversations you'd want them to prioritise to understand their real service effectiveness, Sean?
Yeah, I'd come back to some of the same fundamentals, which is understand demand, right? Not all of that demand needs to be there. What's causing it? Go and spend time, and go and spend time in other parts of the organisation to try and walk all of the steps that a customer has to walk to understand that experience. It's often said, but when push comes to shove, I don't think it happens maybe as nearly as much. Go spend time with customers, be a customer, talk to me, and live it and experience it for yourself. And then I think the other thing that I do is go do some research and gem up quite quickly on the existing programs and projects of change that are in flight already, because quite often those can be things that you can attached to. I mean, it's in a positive way, and positively influence, as opposed to trying to start up something big and brave and bold over here. But within those first 100 days is really understand the realities of what's going on, and if you need support from someone who's in this space, like ourselves, is this might sound strange. I refer to ourselves as being a consultancy with a small c. We're not, don't get me wrong, someone's yet to give me this dilemma, but we're not big fans of multi-year consulting transformation programs, because from our own backgrounds, we just don't believe that outsiders can come in and transform organizations. They can't do it to you. So what we'd rather do is train people, give them, equip them with the skills and tools so that they can sustain and grow the change themselves. That's the only way it's going to work. But anyway, that's probably goes outside the 100 days, but it definitely looking at the skills and capabilities. So we refer to management maths, right? Not just in customer service in the UK. Sort of I'm not suggesting you be this boring at a dinner party, but if you were to sort of do a straw poll, hands up who's got a maths GCSE, you'd see most of the room put their hand up. Who's got maths A level? Who's got a degree? Now, the point I'm getting to is statistics, like mathematical statistics. There are some really basic but really powerful statistical techniques and tools which never get taught in school. They never get taught in the fields of management, because it's very humanities based. And when we find we sort of train people up in these really basic statistic tools, it's like the fog's been cleared from their eyes. They see their service operations in a really new light, and they're creating capacity to go and improve the service rather than being on the back foot all the time.
Excellent. Thank you. And I must say, your point about the curiousness, I mean, from my perspective, let's say, someone like me is working with someone before that they get to those first 100 days. But, people in the interview pipeline, if we like, those that are having interviews with individuals, I think it's so important, as you say, to be really curious at that step, as well as then this first 100 days step, because too often I think they don't, the tough questions go unasked or unanswered because people feel that they're being a bit stupid sometimes asking questions, or they're exposing themselves, or they should just be there to tell and give answers. So you end up telling, giving all the answers, knowing all the answers. And actually, as you say, they're not asking the right questions. They're not understanding the issues, the fundamental issues, which from what you've described, I don't want to dismiss what you do, but it's quite basic fundamentals that then, as you say, is the gift that keeps giving. Once you've got that foundation and that understanding, that expertise, it just keeps on coming back and back and back.
Yeah, and this is the point where at some point, depending on the nature of the change, depending on the nature of the environment that you find yourself is, you can end up bumping your head on things like politics, right? And in all of this, we recognise, whilst the stuff that, removing obvious bias that we say, well, of course it's common sense. I mean, it's a uncommon sense, if you will. We do recognise that in some organisations that might just not be for them. They're not ready for it, and for a number of reasons, that's the timing may not be right. But I think to what you're alluding to, for people going through that process beyond the obvious questions, be asking, what's the money been spent on in change over the last number of years? Go have a look on Trustpilot. You can be a bit of a nerd like me, and then it doesn't take too many screens, and you think, okay, I can see what's going on here. You start to see some of the indicators of service failure.
But why also has the business not yet achieved what you want me to do? Because clearly they've not been trying, right? So, it's not like, oh yeah, well, it hasn't worked, but you come in and it will work now, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, and this is but without sort of trying to sound too preachy, that whole thing of, I don't, it's attributed to Einstein, definition of madness is keep on doing the same thing and hoping for a different result, which is why perversely, we are definitely finding more openness to consider new ways of thinking and new doing. And from our modest vantage, what we're trying to do is bring a bit more of the science to service and make it a bit more accessible and non-technical, if that makes sense.
Yep, great. Okay, fabulous. Well, that's been really insightful. Thank you, Sean. So, is there anything else you want to add before we sort of close off?
No, I think if I bang the drum once or twice, I've probably done it repeatedly. But no, just to thank you for the opportunity to come and share some of our thoughts and experiences with you. I hope your viewers and listeners find it helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously all the ways to contact you and your colleagues will be in here on the screen, and also in all the comments and what have you. And I think what was the offer that you offer, because I'm not selling it here, but it sounded too good to be true. So if you can't find, is it 20% of service efficiencies you won't charge someone?
You haven't got me on tape saying that, have you? Yeah, no. So joking aside, yeah, I mean, look, this we're really happy to put our money where our mouth is, and this might be relevant to anyone, particularly people coming new into role, which is that for us it's about relationships, sales, and what happened down the line. Really to have a conversation. We educate people, knowing that we take a risk when they come to our quarterly events, but equally, if we'll come in, we're up for conversations where we can put some risk at play here, and the bottom line is, we're pretty confident in most complex regulated industries. If we can't find 20% service waste, then it's on us.
Yep, great. Thank you. What a fabulous offer. Well, if anyone wants to contact you and have a sort of no obligation conversation, it's available to do so. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And yeah, great to talk.